Than putting it into landfills, for example, from a climate change perspective?
I'm not too sure at this stage, because I think it's good to be honest with this conversation. I think
I feel that, and I'm sure what to say. I think that the market is a bit ahead of policy, and I think that the discussions around waste to energy
recovery at the landfill site had been a major policy position in Ghana. That's from my point of view. I'm not too sure of any hierarchy arrangement that places recovery at the place other than the landfill site in terms of energy. So my point is that policy has to catch up with this conversation. Help in addressing one of the things that he was saying about the fact that they need the standards, they need the thresholds, they need the clarity of what the policy is seeking to achieve, and they'll comply. But it has to be evidence-based. That for me is very, very crucial. Yeah.
So because we have quite a lot, an international crowd here today, and we heard earlier from Brian, who was discussing the need to have a very robust standard which helps to sort of govern what enters into the country. Do you have any standards in mind which already exist that you would like to adopt or adapt? Or do you have in the process your own standard for that qualification?
As far as I'm concerned, there's no one single place that we have the standard. I think it's fragmented.
Yeah.
From where I sit and from what I've heard, the whole intent is to have one single stop shop where you can have one policy or regulatory requirement that would deal with the import, the type of import, the sizing of the bills, the content of the bills. And let me tell you a story. I think it's good to end with a story. I think most of us in this room, one or the other, relates to second-hand textiles. My uncle used to be part of the value chain, and where I grew up, I had to learn how to deal with second-hands, and the point that on Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturday morning, you don't want to miss what happens at Agbogboloshi. And also, so I'm saying that for some reason, our orientation about the demand for second-hand clothing is such that you are rather looking at what you can salvage than the waste. And the other point is that the idea of having to reduce the waste content of a bill, for me, is what the policy is yet to address. So, to end, my point is that the policy has to carefully put together the pieces of intervention across board at one single place to make sure that the market is safeguarded. Two reasons is that I don't want to see my uncle, who is still in this business, lose his business. But at the same time, I want to see quality bill that will cut the losses of my uncle. And I think the policy can help dealing with that.
That is great perspective to have. Protecting the livelihoods, as well as, you know, increasing the quality and the value of what actually enters in here, putting some gatekeeping in there at the border entry. So I can see you nodding along. Do you have anything to suggest, to add to this?
Just to also emphasize about the story, because I quite remember when I was pursuing my undergraduate program, my mom then was selling second-hand clothing at Cantonment, where you might have visited, and just by the rails. So every afternoon after school, I'll go and sit by her, and then she would take a bit of leave to go and do other things, and I would then be the marketer, selling on her behalf until she comes back. And so when she was talking about the story, I just quickly remembered about my case. So we are all so much acquainted with the situation, and we wish we could have the best solution in handling it so that there will not be job lost, but at least it would enhance commitment, it will enhance investment, and it also enhance the society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We didn't have enough time really for this conversation, but I just have one more question to ask either of you about the extended producer responsibility framework, which includes textiles, but exists only, I understand, as a draft. And until it becomes law, who's legally responsible for the end-of-life pathway of a garment that arrives in Cantonmento market and ends up as a residue? So not what happens right now, but who actually is a responsible partner? Does the responsibility sit with the economic operator who placed it onto the market? Does it sit with the owner at the time where it becomes waste, so potentially the customer? Where does that responsibility sit in your mind?
All right, so currently, I think the responsibility sits with the end user. You may have, like almost all of us seated here, we are clothed. We have clothes also in our wardrobes, many of them. And when it gets to a point of disposing it, it becomes a burden. How do I dispose it? Do I add it to the normal municipal solid waste and then it ends up at the landfill? Or what should I do? And looking at the situation we have in Ghana, that's the only option. I just have to wrap it in a paper bag and then dump it into the trash can, and then the trash collectors will just pick it away. That's the only option that I have. So the responsibility currently sits with the end users. But when it gets to how, maybe who is now in charge of managing it, then I will then move to the waste collection companies or the waste service providers, because they will come and pick it with a view of having something that could be of value at the recycling point, but to get there, and it is a textile material, which they may not have any value for it now. And so it also becomes a burden to the collectors. So it depends on... All right.
Well, I think on that note, we're going to wrap up rather a technical conversation, but so eloquently put by both of our experts here today. So thank you very much, and please join me in thanking Dr. Benefor and Dr. Jimmer.
Thank you so much, Lavinia Fernandez. We'll now head to have a fireside chat on Ghana's pathway to finance, and this will be moderated by Persis Kusi. She's a project lead for Korea Environmental Industry and Technology Institute. She'll be having this conversation with Komla Nyalete, who is Executive Director for ABSA Bank, or the MD for Retail Banking ABSA. If you're here, can we have you up here, please?
Good morning. My name is Persis Kusi. I work as the project lead at the Korea Environmental Industry and Technology Institute. And with me today, we are going to have what we like to call the fireside discussion. Basically, what we seek to do with this discussion is to unpack some of the myths, some of the misconceptions, or some of the issues or the challenges that we have on a very critical aspect of this conversation, especially since we are talking about rebuild today, which is financing. Now, over the years, we've had several conversations about trying to figure out what the problem is. And I believe over the course of the years, we've been able to identify the problem. We've been able to define the problem, define the various pressure points across the value chain, and also we've been able to identify what is needed or what should be targeted across the various pressure points to address the issues we've identified. However, what always comes up is that between our ambitions, between the problems, and between the ideas or the solutions is a gap, and that gap is financing. So we want to look at how we can address these challenges, and I think it's really appropriate and apt that we have with us to help us in this discussion the MD, the Deputy MD for Absa Bank in the person of Mr. Kofi Nyalete, and he will be helping us with this discussion today. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Nyalete.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, great. So we'll just go right into it so we don't take too much of your time. But the first question I would like to ask you is what makes recycling, or what makes a recycling project or a recovery project bankable?
All right. So once again, thanks for having me, and good morning to all of you. I popped through this yesterday for some 15 minutes, so today's probably my first day as well. I'll come to the question. But before then, just to say, the first time I started, getting engaged with landfills to landmarks was last year, when my friend Samuel Jampo, reached out to me. From last year to now, to be honest, I'm still trying to clearly understand, the very important problem of value that this initiative is trying to deliver. This point is important in my answer, so that's how come I want to make it, upfront. But this morning as well, some of the presenters, have enlightened me, and I think that there is quite a very important, maybe problem or opportunity that we need to tackle. Also, I would dare say that it is only a very few Ghanaians who have probably never worn a second-hand clothing before. Maybe you were probably born somewhere, with a lot of money in your father's account. Outside of that, all of us, we've worn second-hand clothing before. But then when we start growing up and probably making some money, we probably then begin to, get away, because maybe it's viewed in a particular manner, right? So to use myself as an example, since I probably, started working and earning an income maybe about 2 decades ago, the last time I returned to buy a used clothes was probably a month ago. And I bought it from my nephew. So I have a nephew who completed, school. This, what we call in Ghana, national service, got to work for government, or got to work for like free for a stipend for like a year. After that, then you begin to look for proper work to do, or a career. So this nephew of mine, after he did service, and he did service with Absa Bank, because Absa Bank will get him an opportunity to do service. The Ghanaians will understand this very well. But after that, the guy says, he wants to run a business. It was actually a business he's running, proud to even completing uni. And he's dealing in used clothing. That's a business that my nephew, runs. And he simply runs it out of maybe the storeroom in my home. So a month ago, I actually traded in a new shoe that I bought that was not fitting. So I traded in, and I bought his used shoe. Maybe if I had the presence of mind, I would have worn that shoe to this, event. But I'll show it to, Samuel Jampo, just to let you know that this is a subject which is quite very close to all of us. And as early as a month ago, I bought one item. Now to your question, how can this whole enterprise be bankable, or be structured in a manner that financial institutions can fund it? The first point is that today in Ghana, or at least using my firm as an example, we are on the lookout, we are on the search for commercially viable businesses to fund. All right, so there is capital out there in the market looking for, once again, the key word is commercially viable projects, to fund. And therefore, provided the venture is commercially viable, I will imagine if no other bank is interested, you can be rest assured ABSA will be interested. But from the little that I've heard, from Jampus last year into this morning, I get the sense that this is a sector still in development. And this is a sector, this is an area which may not, immediately appear, to be commercially viable. Well, if you were to come to me today, maybe looking for, say, a 3-year capital to do something like this, I'll probably lend you at, say, 14% in Ghana cedi, in local currency. So the question is, if I were to give you a 14% cost of capital, can you run these recycling, setups to be able to pay interest and to pay the capital back? That is simply the question that bankers want answer to. And therefore, anybody who is able to structure an enterprise in that manner should be able to get funding. But it sounds to me like there are certain values that this enterprise delivers, which may not be immediately quantifiable and cannot be translated into the Excel templates to show or to answer definitively the commercial viability. For example, I can see a certain good that these enterprises deliver. And what is that?
For example, it will help with reducing pollution, right? So you have to ask yourself, how do we quantify in monetary terms the benefit to the society in reduced pollution, for example? And how can we factor that into the commercial viability models that are being built up? Another example, if there is reduced, let's say, pollution across the society, there's value to that. It probably means that central government, the municipalities, may be spending less on waste collection or may be spending less on tackling certain health negative effects. Therefore, is it possible for us to explain this, quantify this, and show it to policymakers, show it to central government, so that they can transfer some of their budget that they have to deal with pollution reduction or health problems? Those can be transferred to the actors in this area as some form of what? Maybe interest subsidy, in order to make the whole venture commercially viable. So those are the things that I think we need to grapple with. In summary, if you come to a funder at the base, he will simply ask you, does your number stack up? But if there are values in other areas, then we must find ways of quantifying them and let the people that value is going to begin to pay for it in one way or the other.
Okay. But you mentioned a critical component, which is commercial viability. Now, from where we sit as development partners and as an institution, we tend to get a lot of project concept papers focusing on textile recycling, on recycling recovery options. And when we receive these kind of requests or proposals, the first question that comes to our minds is, have they approached the banks? Because for us as an institution, we are kind of tied because the request must come from government. So we are not able to do much. But if you look in the sector, you realize that there's still an infrastructure gap, and that gap needs to be addressed by financing. And we still haven't been able to address that gap because there's a lack of financing. So how then do businesses prove this commercial viability? And also, what are the other criteria that a bank is looking out for to be able to say that this is a business that is viable and it's worth investing in, and then the banks will go ahead to invest?
All right. Thanks. It is the promoters who must take the lead in proving the commercial viability of the venture. As I probably did indicate at the beginning, I cannot claim to be appropriately, knowledgeable in this sector. I am not at all. And therefore, it is maybe the experts like, Mr. Jampo and others who must take the lead, and work with the bankers to demonstrate same, right? Today, if I look across my portfolio, I do business with a couple of firms in manufacturing. Some of you may know North Shore up in the north, right? Some of you may know Margrace. Those are clients of mine, but I think they are not in the used clothing side, right? But they are doing quite sizable business and have taken the lead in demonstrating that those enterprises are, viable. And therefore, in summary, quite simply, promoters like the experts in this room must take the lead. The other part of the question is, what are the other considerations? All firms, including banks, are also interested in a better society. We are interested in ensuring that our communities do well. So ESG is one of the levers that we measure ourselves by, right? And I can imagine that if we are able to develop commercially viable projects in this sector, that is a good thing to do, a good project to fund. And I can list it as one of my achievements in my contribution towards ESG. And therefore, on the back of that, I should be able to offer some discount on account of that. In other words, there are other considerations that banks are also interested in. ESG, but carbon, making sure that the carbon footprints are better. And therefore, if we demonstrate the good that this sector delivers, we should be able to raise funding at a discount to the market rate.
To wrap up this conversation, maybe my final question to you would be, you've talked about commercial viability, you've talked about the project developers, the policymakers, the experts taking the lead. But then I would want to get a better understanding. What is the main issue when it comes to project developers accessing financing? Is it an issue of trust? Is it an issue of the businesses not being able to prove themselves as creditworthy? Or is it an issue of the banks simply not believing in the business case that these small businesses are presenting? And then what would be your advice to these project developers? Because I believe there are a number of them in this room. What would be your final word to them in putting themselves together or developing a strong business case to present to the bank that you can consider as a winning business model that will attract the needed financing?
All right, thanks. The factors you mentioned are all in play, right? So it's a combination. In certain instances, it may be one, and another instance, it may be a combination of one and two. So all of those, really come into play. And also to say that maybe until recently, the macro situation in Ghana simply made it a bit more attractive, probably for some banks to look to put their capital elsewhere and not in real, business. A lot of you will know that maybe if you take your mind back 2 years ago, cost of capital in Ghana was probably around 25%, 30%. That is probably almost levels that excessively few businesses can thrive at. But to say what can we do going forward in new areas, and I'll put what you're discussing here today, or this sector industry as a new one, right? Recycling is definitely new to Ghana, and in a new area, promoters must definitely invest a lot more time in carrying other stakeholders along, including potential funders, right? And also, maybe we should see how we can start small, right? Today, I'm able, and I do lend, even up to 2 million Ghana cedis without collateral and deliver that very quickly. So maybe if you come to me with a project maybe with $500,000, maybe I'll look at that and I may say, okay, let me take a risk on this, right? If it doesn't go well, maybe I don't lose too much. But if your starting point is maybe $20 million, then, the due diligence cannot be, short-circuited. So my advice would be, number one, for new sectors, you must invest time to carry potential funders along to get them to understand. And two, probably let's start small and scale up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nyalete, for joining us for this all-important discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you very much, Professor Kusi and Dr. Komla Nyalete. He's Executive Director for Absa Bank. We'll now move into a delivery-focused evidence window on the Pure Pad project with GTP. But before then, kindly pay attention to the screens.
The Pure Pad project, a collaborative initiative between Landfills to Landmarks Foundation, Grace Presbyterian Church, Ekopon District, and Amour Europe, with support from GTP and Sate Recycling. Now, the project introduces reusable sanitary pads to support girls in deprived communities, combining faith-based leadership, circular economy, innovation, and women's empowerment to tackle menstrual health challenges.
I'm now 65 years, so you can imagine the time I used pad. Those days we were even using toilet rolls. Not much of us know how to use the pad. And when we started using the pad, we were using the one where the maternity people use, the long pad. But since the new system came, and the new sanitary pads were introduced, we cannot find those things anymore in schools. But in our villages, they are still using the waste materials and whatnot for their menses. I think what you've brought, it will help the youth, the parents, and the community as a whole. It's a very good initiative.
This is a result of months of work where the ladies have used recycled textiles to make the bags for the reusable sanitary pads. They've also used reusable textiles to make the holders for the pads, and each child will receive 7 pads, 2 holders, and a bag. It's interesting to know that the holders and the bags were purely made from recycled textiles. The cottoner was supplied by GTP, the towels was supplied by TRI and the Sate Recycling Limited, and then we had to purchase the waterproof elements. So clearly about 80% of the items used to make these pads were donated items. The only investment we had to make was the purchase of the waterproof elements.
TRI Group have been working with the Cantonmento market and establishing second-hand clothing that was unsold that can be used as part of the take-back scheme that allow us to give these products new life and then be turned into the Pure Pad project. And we're continuing to follow that on with more sustainable projects going forward. And this project on this roadmap was a clear indication of the journey that TRI is on with Landfills to Landmark.
You approximately in the middle, approximately 1 centimetre in, punch a hole all the way through, and then turn it around in the middle, 1 centimetre all the way through. So then it's a case of pushing one stud through so it's facing down, and then it's really important that the next one faces up. Yep. So there you've got your 2 backs in place. Then you have your poppers. One's male, so it points out, and one's female, it goes in. So you, first of all, doesn't matter which one you choose, so it's in place. Now it's important that the stud at the back sits right in the middle of the punch. So you can see there, it's right in the middle, just slightly over, yeah, there you go. So then press it down with a little bit of force, not a lot. So that's one's been pressed down, and then you put the male one on, the next one, push that down, and again make sure it's in the middle, just yeah, press that down slightly, and let's see if it snaps. Yeah, perfect.
So the ladies here in Ghana have sewn the bags ready for us, and we're just threading these threads, cables to tie up the bag into the bag holder. So I've threaded it through, and now I'm just going to pull this out, and we have our bag, and we're going to tie this up, and tie this in a knot.
This is a very great opportunity for young girls such as myself, and the way the pad comes in, it is reusable, and it's very, very, very amazing, because you use one, you just have to wash it and then dry it under the sun. You can use it the next day, but with the non-reusable pads, you have to use it and throw it away the next day. And there are young girls like me who menstruate like twice a month or sometimes 7 days, and it's exhausting having to go and buy a pad for 2 times, like twice in a week. You have to use 40 cedis and buy 2 pads, and I think this is a very, very great opportunity, and we are very grateful to Pure and all the other partners.
I'm sure that all of us appreciate the urgency of the day when it comes to sustainability, matters that affect climate change, matters that affect our society and our environment, and everything that we can do to contribute to sustainability, I believe, is something that each and every one of us has to focus on, has to donate our time.
We've just launched this amazing project behind us with Landfills to Landmarks. It's the Pure Pad project. It's such an exciting project that we got involved with, and as a company, we're truly honoured to be part of it. Not only does it cover sustainability and helps the environment, it empowers so many women and so many girls in the community, and we're committing to donating the materials that they need to make this a huge success.
So more boys in front and the girls at the back. Together we shall move side by side, side by side.
Our young girls sometimes battle with menstrual cramps, and sometimes some of them absent themselves from school for 1 week. Sometimes to some of them, they don't have pad to use, so they stayed at home till they are done with the menstrual period.
God will bless you for the pad. We think it will help us in many ways. for buying pads in home. Maybe our mother will not get money to buy us. So thanks for the pad.
We've talked to the girls about the stigma attached to period poverty and how the pad packs that we've brought are going to break that they're not going to worry about staining their uniforms and not to be embarrassed when they're on their period. And the ladies here who have sewn the pad packs have done an amazing job.
So the use of the reusable pads is a real game changer for us in Ghana because it offers numerous benefits. First of all, it's very cost effective. The reusable pads can be used multiple times. It can be used up to a year. And so it reduces the financial burden of disposable pads, thus making it a more sustainable option for managing menstrual health.
That we don't bring enough money to school. How can we save some of our money for food to buy sanitary pad? I personally bring 20 cedis to school. How can I use that 20 cedis for food and the same time as for sanitary pad? We have to thank the people who has brought us the reusable sanitary pad because bringing us the sanitary pad has made different changes in our life. We even play when we have our periods. We use our money for food. We eat and feel very satisfied.
Before the pad, I don't have money to buy a sanitary pad. I was very happy to hear such a news. Previous, I used bandage and tea rolls. So I don't feel comfortable coming to school. But nowadays, when I get the reusable pads, I came to school and my attendance is good.
It makes me feel comfortable when I'm in school. I thank you very much. I wish if you could bring us different type of that same reusable pad.
The Pure Pad project has been a progressive project since its launch last year. This year we're looking up to distributing about 2,500 pads to 500 vulnerable girls. And we hope that it's going to be a blessing to them. God bless Landfills to Landmarks. God bless the sponsors. And we hope that it will go a long way to be a blessing to a lot of people in this country.
That's actually a great initiative there by Landfills to Landmarks, Kind Courtesy GTP. Now we'll now have this delivery focused on the Pure Pad project with GTP, which will show how textile recovery, livelihoods, dignity, local production, and measurable social outcomes can be linked through practical implementations. And to have this presentation, I'd like to invite Georgina Mensah, who is the head of marketing at GTP.
Hello everyone.
Thank you for having me. So, from the documentary that we just watched, I hope we can all agree that the reusable sanitary pads are a sustainable, practical, and healthy solution for managing menstrual health, especially in Ghana, where most of our communities in the deprived areas cannot afford these pads. And so for us, this is a great social impact initiative that we are supporting, because we believe that it helps to tackle period poverty, empower women, and also provide environmental sustainability. You can see from the documentary that over 500 women have been employed, gainfully employed, to produce these pads. And this also helps to provide dignity for children and women whilst diverting textile waste from landfills. And so this is the more reason why we from Textiles Ghana Limited and GTP brand, being the largest textile manufacturer in Ghana, we thought this was a great initiative to be part of. And so by being on board this project, we are actually contributing to the circular economy aspect of the project through the donation of surplus textiles from our production in our factory at the Textiles Ghana Limited factory in Tema. And I would also say that this is a very great initiative for us because it aligns with our brand promise as a brand. Our brand promise is to give women confidence, and this project aligns with it, and that is why we are on board to support it. I'm also happy to also announce that after the pilot phase, this year being the main phase, we're going to have over 2,500 children benefiting from this initiative. We're going to have 2,500 school children from selected schools in the northern region to be beneficiaries of this project from June up to the end of this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Georgina. It's always nice and very powerful when sustainability moves from conversations to actual implementation. And I believe this PAD initiative is one of them. Now let's turn our focus to traceability outcomes across reuse, recycling, recovery, and disposal. And to give that address, we have Natasha Kola, who is with TextAid. If you're here, can we have you up here, please?
Hi everybody. Etise? Sorry? Okay. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for having me here too. Today I'm here on behalf of TextAid. I'll be presenting to you a little bit of an insight on the upstream activities that we do. Sorry. So first, to give a little introduction on TextAid. Maybe if you have the microphone. Yeah, can I use the microphone maybe? I think that would be better. Yes, so small introduction on TextAid. We are a commercial sorter and collector. Thank you. A commercial collector and sorter of post-consumer textiles. And we've been in the industry for 48 years. We are Swiss-based, but we have sorting facilities in Germany, Switzerland, Bulgaria, and Hungary, and we collect around 70 to 80,000 tons of post-consumer textiles a year. We have around 900 employees throughout all our businesses, which cover also second-hand shops in Germany and online resale platforms. And today's focus is on how sorting looks like, so the upstream side of the industry, what recovery pathways exist today, and how this can also be relevant to the Ghanaian ecosystem. Okay, so the sorting is our core expertise and is also the business model basically that we have, the sorting for reuse. It is a crucial step in revalorizing used textiles, so transforming them from waste to a product. So either second-hand clothing or recycling feedstock that we feed into different recycling technologies. Sorting is also an enabler to tap into any downstream recovery pathways. So basically, any textile circularity lives and dies at the sorting stage. Especially when talking about recycling, of course, sorting is the main crucial activity, but also a bottleneck in today's industry. Today, we sort manually, like many other collectors, sorters as well. It's a very labor-intensive process and a highly specialized process. So the sorting ladies, they work at the facility 25, 30 years, and they built this expertise and knowledge on second-hand clothing, but also a small part of it also on recycling. So the trust we have in the partnerships that we have in receiving countries is built on this executed sorting expertise, which is of course sorting discipline, consistency, and also adaptability based on the markets that we export to. And through that, within our value chain, I think this is our main responsibility that we take, that we deliver that quality in sorting, and that this sorting is actually wanted and exactly what is needed and demanded in the importing countries. So in our sorting, we follow the waste hierarchy. We've heard that before. We don't do that because of compliance, but because it's actually just the ecologically and the economically most viable way to do it. We sort by hand in up to 300 categories for the reuse part, and then 5 to 10 categories on the recycling part. I'll go into a bit more detail on this later. And then we go, of course, majority goes into reuse. This is the core business that we have, and then about 30% goes into recycling. Waste is around 5 to 10%, depending also on the location. So the reality today within this sorting business case is that the highest value retention is for the reusable goods, and that anything that we sort for recycling is at a negative margin. So this is a big challenge we face today. So, as I said already before, sorting for reuse is an established business case. It's been here for the past 30, 35, 40 years. And if we look at the sorting for recycling business case, it's not really there and not financially viable yet. So the pathways we tap into today for the recycling is mainly mechanical downcycling processes. We have cotton-rich textiles, which we cut into wipers in our own sorting facility in Hungary. This is a very basic step where you just cut the textile into a square. Then we have natural fibers like wool and cashmere, which we can recycle back into fibers. This happens in Europe as well. And then down and feathers, we can wash and sterilize them. Not we, sorry, but our partners. So anything recycling is happening with our partners, not within our own facilities, apart from the wiper production. And then lastly, the mixed fibers, which is the most challenging fraction. Some of them can be mechanically recycled into shoddy fibers that are used in insulation, but some of them also just don't find a suitable recycling pathway. So on the textile-to-textile recycling side, we are still at the very beginning in Europe. We don't have a perfect solution yet at all. It's very marginal, and it only happens on the basis of R&D projects, which we have, or my department is coordinating. So the bottlenecks in recycling mainly are that there is no financial basis for the low-value textiles, so especially the mixed fibers, synthetic rich fibers. There's no business case there. So we're hoping for EPR to also be a lever in that sense for us to be able to finance all the possible fractions that we get in our sorting. Then the next one is that the manual sorting does not match the requirements set by the recyclers. So because we sort by hand, and it's also quite subjective, or the distinction of composition happens based on experience but not on data. So we've heard the presentation of new retext yesterday. This is the direction, of course, we will also be going, hopefully, in the future. Also, the offtake markets for the recycled fibers are not developed yet. There's no mandatory recycled content, so there's no incentive for brands to invest money into more expensive processes or more expensive materials as recycled fibers, for example. And then I would say the technological readiness is given, but it's not fully adapted to the full stream of post-consumer textiles, which is, again, a very mixed stream of everything you can find in your wardrobe. So what are we currently doing to improve the sorting? We are looking into digitalization and automation of sorting. Of course, this is also a big investment, so there needs to be offtake markets for that. We're looking into AI, of course, as well, NIR and different other recognition technologies to integrate that into our sorting, to increase efficiency, feedstock reliability, and also traceability, big topic, and then also just to aid sorting decisions, to make them more data supported. Well, what kind of data we are looking out for is material composition, which is, I think, the most challenging one. Color and disruptors. So also before any recycling can happen, oftentimes disruptors have to be removed, which is also a manual process and very costly. We're also looking into DPP and EPR developments. We've heard a bit about that. And with that already comes the requirement for us to collect data in a specific way. So we're also waiting for those developments to concretize. Yes, we're also working on sorting and handling specifications with different consortiums in Europe to be able to have a standardized process of sorting textiles. Basically, yes, a common language on the quality standards. So certifications is something that we're also, of course, looking into. How can this trade be fair, and how can we make sure that our sorting expertise is verifiable or certifiable? Then lastly, on some learnings that may be transferable to Ghana, I think, of course, the infrastructure gap is there, but once collection sorting is there, I think the sorting really determines the quality of the feedstock and the subsequent recycling. So there's, of course, different levels of technologies that can be implemented. It doesn't have to be full-on automated. It can be started off as manual handheld scanners to see the composition, and then also scaled in the future. And I think what is also important, what we also face a lot, is just this collaboration with recyclers, but also manufacturers, and basically with the whole value chain, in order to, also for the recyclers, we need to know what the recyclers can take, and the recyclers need to know what they're getting from us. So again, the whole data transferability is a big topic we're looking into, and I think also here, this is already in the discussion, so that's great. Also, I think recycling solutions are most effective when they're targeted to the waste that is actually accumulating in the specific context of Ghana here. So if we look at textile waste, it will be very different from what we collect in Europe, of course. And technologies that are going to be implemented here have to really take that into account. So the volumes that arise, but also the condition of the textiles, the composition, and all of that. And then lastly, I think the offtake markets is very important. So if we have collection systems, we have sorting systems, and we can recycle, but we don't have any offtake markets and nobody to sell it to, it will be very challenging. So we have to look that we have those offtake markets for products, be it upcycled products, recycled fibers. We have to have these people also in the conversations. So brands and also, of course, recyclers, they have to be at the table. Yes, I think that's it. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Natasha. We move on now and have a presentation from Clyde Recycling. And to have this presentation, ladies and gentlemen, join me welcome Mr. Owen Ritchie. Want to use this?
Yeah, it's right as well. Okay. A little video just now. My name's Owen Ritchie. I'm the Managing Director at Clyde Recycling Limited in Glasgow. It is our 40th anniversary as a family-run business this year. We have been sorting and collecting textiles from all across Scotland for this time, grading and shipping into Africa. We've got a great relationship with our customers out here, and we'd love to continue that and grow that, and that's why we're very proud to be part of Landfill to Landmarks. Last year we gained a lot of knowledge by coming out, going to Cantamanto Market, seeing the challenges they were facing. We've implemented some changes back since then, and coming back this year we've went out and checked, and the changes have worked, and we've got some more changes that are needed going back to our grading, which never really changes in itself. There's always small details that need to be kind of altered depending on what the market's like. We're very proud to be part of Bale Index because we sort and grade, and we're proud of what we do. This for us is perfect. We want to show our quality. We want to show what we do, the practices that we've learned over the past 40 years, and grow this and see any mistakes that we could be making and improve on them.
So yeah, this is our 40th year anniversary as a family-run business. We started up in East End of Glasgow, and now we are still there. We collect from all over Scotland. We bring it back to our depot where we grade everything by hand. We've got 80 sorters and graders on site, and they are all very experienced at what they do. So there's been a lot of talk about the exporters and about the quality of the bales. But this is something that we really take pride in, and I think the transparency that Landfill to Landmarks is offering will show this. Will show the rogue traders to the real traders. Our sorting process is very specified. It's very fine. We've got checks and balances at different stages of the process, and we also have checks and balances from a government level. We've got an environmental agency in Scotland, which is called SEPA. They stop containers at the port, they bring them back, they inspect the bales to make sure there's no waste in them. So I understand that there is some bales that have got waste in them, but coming from the certified exporters and experienced exporters, we are confident in our quality. We've had customers for over 30 years, which again we wouldn't have. We wouldn't have repeat custom if we were constantly putting in waste into bales. I think we need to be very aware of false information and agendas, and we need to have proper statistics and real products to make the difference. So I've got an example of our quality of bale, a small story. My main customer for 30 years, he called us 2 years ago, and he asked if I was selling to someone else.
And I explained, no, we're definitely not selling to anyone else. But he said he's seen my bale on the market getting sold by someone else. And what actually happened was our logo, which has numbers, got copied. It got copied and put into someone else's bale because we've got such a good reputation. So again, I just want to echo that landfill to landmarks is great. It's trace, account and rebuild. And here's to another 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Owen. Now, our next presentation reminds us why conversations like this around recovery systems and the future pathways matters beyond all the policy spaces alone. So to have that particular presentation, I'd like to invite the young girl, Araba Ankoma, for this particular presentation.
Hello everyone. Good morning or afternoon. So today's conversation is about transitioning to a circular society. So what does that look like? What does that mean? We're looking to create a more just space for the circular textile economy, and specifically looking at how social capital and social networks create that space. So, as we all know, the circular economy is a transition away from the linear economy, the make, take, waste, and moving towards a place where we are having recovery. We look at how systems can create zero waste and minimize these system externalities. And in my research, I found that almost 84% of the current research focuses on the technocentric circular economy, which is a lot of what has been spoken about today and in this week. The goals are economic innovations, breakthroughs in circular economy technologies, and creating human progress without negative externalities. It assumes that our growth-focused capitalism is compatible with sustainability, and the technological innovations will allow for economic growth without resource depletion. But when we look at this diagram, it occurred to me that something is missing. Where are the humans? In this system, often humans are considered either consumers or users. But I think we found them. In places like Panipat, India, touted as the world's largest recycling hub for textiles, or here in Kansamanso in Accra, the people working within this system are hardly able to survive. And so what does that look like? If they want to keep us alive, or if they want to keep this work alive, they must also keep us alive. So how does this happen? It often happens because that triple bottom line of sustainability prioritizes profit over planet and people. Instead, if we nest profit and understanding that every exchange must happen with people and planet in mind, we create an anti-fragile form of circularity. So the type of circular economy that we're looking at is more of a circular society, and only 12% of the literature currently focuses around this, where social innovations are just as important as technological ones, and how material prosperity can be given to all within the bounds of the earth. It looks at potentially a reformed form of capitalism in order to create an economic decoupling between ecological collapse and sustainable development. So what does that look like? It seems out of our realm of possibility. It's not. It actually requires us to go back in time and look at what worlds existed before our standardized one today. So what does that look like? In terms of West Africa and African indigenous communalism, it looks at communal labor and the fact that everyone in society has a role to play. It looks at that this happens because our sense of self is tied to your sense of community, and that education is not just something that happens in the classroom, but something that happens throughout your life, from womb to tomb. It is intergenerational and very much around the people who are around you. So how do we shift from this thinking of I think, therefore I am, this very individualized thinking, to I am because we are? The idea of Ubuntu is through social capital. This is the life-giving force, the energy that creates networks, norms, and social trust that catalyzes participation, cooperation, and reciprocity, and is foundational to getting participation amongst these various stakeholders. There are three kinds of social capital. Bonding social capital, which links like-minded people. bridging, which links groups that wouldn't have otherwise been able to connect, and linking, which is a larger institution reaching down to a grassroots organization. But all three of these need to be managed. Too much bonding social capital, you get xenophobia, you get racism. Bridging social capital is something that is quite weak in comparison to bonding unless nurtured. And linking social capital, if not well managed, those larger institutions will just mandate down to the grassroots org, and there won't be much change in terms of that political decision making. So where are we trying to direct this social capital to? It's asset-based community development, which allows for us to look at a community, look at the assets that it already possesses, rather than focusing on its deficits. And these 6 things here are some of the major parts of those assets. How can someone with knowledge trade with someone who has an association or someone who has a local place to go? So exchange happens to be one of the most important parts of those assets. So when we're exchanging, when we're building out this scaffolding, these are called social networks. It's the actual scaffolding onto which social capital can flow. What we found in the research is that the current circular economy contains structural holes which prevent the flow of resources, materials, information, etc. And so what does that look like for how we solve this problem? Circularity brokers who exist to join these nodes together and help these various nodes achieve common goals. And so if social capital is the water, asset-based community development is where we're trying to direct it to, and social networks are the plumbing, well then the circularity broker happens to be kind of the coolest plumber that there ever was, in my opinion, and what I hope to do in this realm. So, who are these stakeholders? What assets do they possess? What is the nature of their social capital today? And what constraints prevent them from leveraging their assets? My research looked at how might we explore the realms of various different stakeholders, from circular designers to mechanical downcycling to community marketplace organizers and material reuse hubs across West Africa, North America, and a bit of Europe. And what we found were the following insights. These are those stakeholders again mapped so you can see them a bit clearly. These are the people I was able to interview. So what we found was 5 major aggregate dimensions. That circular workers are asset-rich creative agents. Unlike the humans that aren't really shown in the current circular economy model, they possess incredible talents and also the skills to reevaluate the materials that they see. They sacrifice in order to be able to use these materials, but because of that sacrifice, they're able to actually gain innovation from that. You have the ability for financial capital to be, There is financial precarity in this model, however, because unfortunately there are funding barriers and there's a reliance on supplemental income in order to create opportunities for themselves. Nobody I've talked to is able to do this material revaluation or this circular upcycling work without having to find other sources of income. There's also the issue that this comes about because of the value recognition gap. Currently, there isn't enough understanding as to why these skills are so important, and as a result, they're having to deal with people who don't have the knowledge and are competing with fast fashion economics. In addition, this leads to there being a lack of trust, and then people are undercompensated for their skill sets. We've also found that despite all these challenges, these makers are able to amplify their hidden assets via education. And when I say education, I mean things like social media marketing in terms of sharing their stories. I mean skills training. I mean ways in which they're able to help people change their mindset around the work that they do. And I found that those who teach actually learn quite a lot from their teachings. And lastly, social capital as circular society infrastructure. Even despite the challenges that they face, people are currently working together, collaborating, creating value, and in doing that, they're able to use these social networks to also facilitate resource flows. Not just information, but also physical materials, from land to containers to storage, because of the people that they know and the ways in which they've built this trust. And so what it's come to know is that these different types of social capital we mentioned are there to help them break through silos and create collaboration efforts, but there's still a need for institutional support. So when we look at the 4 different types, or the 5 different aggregates that I've been able to accumulate, we look at that there's this problem loop. That market misalignment and value recognition gap leads to the undervaluation of these circular workers, which leads to their financial precarity. They're not able to achieve at their capability standards, and for that reason, their assets are remaining hidden, and we go around the loop over and over again. To break that problem loop, we're looking to utilize that social capital infrastructure and amplify their hidden assets in order to create a value perception shift. And so what does that look like? So I created this thing. Oh, yep, this is what I was talking about before. And so what does that look like for us? A circularity brokerage model called Modest World. Modest World is a three-part solution towards this sort of gaps that are missing in our system today. It is a storytelling platform, a directory, and an experiential set of events that help to facilitate exchange and create these opportunities for building social capital as well as economic exchange. So as we've mentioned, this is the three. The next part of it is the magazine itself. So what I've been doing as a documentary photographer and storyteller is making sure that I am telling the stories of these artisans, these makers, to document how the waste, what people see as waste, can actually be made into things that are both beautiful and functional. As we know, the Kokorobite Institute is displaying their works back there, but there's an incredible organization that's working to be an incubator for these makers. I've also done a bit of work in data visualization, and I hope to continue with different issues, being able to outline who are the different practitioners, who is involved in this ecosystem, and who touches a bale. From there, even the work that we've done by talking to natural dye artists, we're able to showcase the types of natural materials that they can be used and foraged in order to revive clothing and make sure it stays out of landfill. A lot of the circular makers I've shown this portion were so fascinated because it could help them evolve their own practice. And so next is the directory. The directory is meant to be a sort of catalog system in order for there to be a maintained digital space for you to find these people and these services, so that it doesn't seem so far-fetched to take a shirt that was once dingy and dye it to the right color, or to be able to get something hemmed or sewn, or to get some textiles made by an incredible textile manufacturer. Those kinds of things are offered here at our digital directory, which we are currently building and developing, so that people can sort and easily find these makers. And lastly is the experiential arm, where we hope to launch Modest World in a way that showcases each of the stations or the types of makers in this space, bringing them all together to create a world build for the day. Bring everyday people in, allow them to take their old clothing, exchange for some tokens, and be able to use those tokens to participate in a dye bath station, a repair station, a swap shop, and also create a space for these makers to sell their pieces. So just to give some sense of what we've been up to, in the last few weeks I've been documenting the specific maker, Nakoi. She's a circular designer who works with found cotton shirts and materials, and she's dyeing and using wax dyeing methods to create these designs. In the upper right corner, you'll see that the two shirts are dyed in the same fabric. However, the one on the left holds that liquid, holds the dye much stronger because it's a fully cotton shirt, whereas the one on the right is polyester. These are things that she knows about and knows that these will affect her designs. But when you look at the tags on her shirts, you can see that they're coming from various different brands. She's turning them into something quite beautiful and quite unique. Another maker I've been documenting over the last few weeks is Deadline Factory. He's a circular textile manufacturer who's taking denim waste and dyeing with reactive dyes as well as with natural dyes, and creating actual yardage of fabrics for designers and brands to be able to use and make their own clothing, textiles, furniture from. His process is quite incredible and quite meticulous, and so it can never be seen as something that is waste. It's quite usable and very much adding to a new supply network rather than just the supply chain. So in terms of what we're looking for in terms of inputs, funding would be great, for the travel and production, because this is something that allows for the story to be told across the African continent. With those inputs, we push out the magazine, the experiential, which creates workshops and learning opportunities for these makers, and the directory, which is the digital database where you can find them. The outcomes of this is expanded visibility for these CE workers and an established network of services as well. And lastly, the whole impact of this is so that we get to a place where these makers have collective voice, and there is an alliance of them that is able to speak up and help shape policy around what others consider waste. We're trying to close the value recognition gap as well. And quite frankly, what Modest World is doing is also picking up where Landfills to Landmarks leaves off. The data that you've seen through the live bale labs has allowed you to trace that data through the end of the bale. But essentially, once the material recovery happens, what happens to the rest of the reusable material? We don't yet have that data, and as of now, Modest World is the way in which we can catalog that and make sure those material recovery efforts make it back to those makers who will actually make use of it. And most importantly, it's important that these makers are able to sell and make their economically exchange by bringing their designs back to the global north. It's not enough for them to be able to do something one way. It's not a circular economy if it only travels in one direction. And so the goal is that the funding efforts and the help that you all provide and work with on Landfills to Landmarks helps us to make sure that these makers are seen, their assets are appreciated, and that they end up being part of the building towards a more circular society. These are some of the metrics that we're going to use to be able to scale this project. Thank you so much.
Yes, okay. Which one? This one?
I think the last one.
Oh, me? My contact?
Yeah.
Okay, it's there.
Thank you very much, Arba Ankoma. Round of applause for her, please. With what we've heard, we now understand why young people need to be on the conversation table as well. We'll take this final video before lunch. It's a textile waste retrieval video. Kindly pay attention to the screens.
Meton jeans. Why na meton? Because of the Accra na medeba. Enti me adwuma me ya no. First na omo ngene de. Se twa abi o ma se wo me afan ya hwe. Ya yetubu. Enti next time me twa me bia me begu aye den. Ama no. Enti me ya na me de gogu ho mu. Aba ya me da ma. Na mu se sana entubu na yetubu no sana ya de a ha ye ho. Because I mean, says I me a BBA may they say I'm mutum de more yen quadia. No, problem be in her. And they may be asked me to go. Takwa de me bad the minje man who be ban a card there I mean who go. On way Yama way as I say no, on mutum de may be or. And the Yama Modi de Abua say, every first year and find a few too good. It's my abonti Guatemina, Basa. Say say I am what you did the Elma. You die fine. Say a bopa.
I believe we can have lunch now, right? All right, we'll now break for lunch. We'll resume 40 minutes after we move away from here. We're moving now at 12:23, exactly 40 minutes after 12:23. We come back here for the global roundtable conversation. We'll be having lunch exactly where we had lunch yesterday. If you weren't here yesterday, the ushers will direct you to the place. We'll be back exactly at 40 minutes after. Thank you very much.
Your flight is ready to leave.
Sit back and relax and enjoy the flight.
If you're watching this with your friends, you'll probably make a joke.
Because you know what you feel on the inside isn't what you want people to know.
If you have to pretend to be happy,
find someone you trust and tell them.
If you get mad at things and you don't know why, or have thoughts about hurting yourself,
find someone you trust and tell them. You are never alone when you share.
Seriously, people care about you.
It's okay to not understand what you're feeling.
And it's easy to think that you're all alone.
But you don't have to be.
You're never alone when you share. Don't be ashamed to tell someone you trust what you're feeling.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Find someone you trust and tell them.
Tell a parent.
Tell a teacher.
Tell a brother or sister.
Or just tell a friend.
You haven't done anything wrong.
Talk to someone.
Talk to someone.
It's how things get better.
For the WoezorTV report, let's take a look at the headlines.